This will be my spring of 2021 Yoshino tree update. This is one of my 3 Yoshinos that I planted back in 2018, 2019, and as you can tell, it was not looking good in May of 2020. This is a Google Earth view of my house, and back in 2018 I bought 2 Yoshinos, number 1 and number 2, and I planted them in the fall. Then in the spring of 2019 I bought my 3rd and planted it there where you see number 3, and that is the Yoshino that's in the first clip of this video. And it's also this Yoshino, which I did a lot of work on in this spring of 2020 to try to save it. I'd found out back in 2020 that the reason the tree looked like that was because I buried it too deep and I didn't expose the root flare. And when that happens, the tree looks like it did back in that first clip. So here's Yoshino number 1 back in the summer of 2020. It was buried much deeper than number 3, so it had many more problems and looked much worse, but I went ahead and tried to lower the soil line. But unfortunately in the fall, I could tell this thing was not going to make any progress and was dead, so I went ahead and dug it up. Now that the history is out of the way, let's take a look at what Yoshino number 3 and 2 look like in spring of 2021. So it's mid-March and everything's starting to bloom out, and so far Yoshino number 3 is not looking so hot. So this is Yoshino number 2, and this is what it looks like on the same day of the other one. It's not really blooming like the other one is at all, so maybe that's a good sign for the other one. But also, I've not made any videos on this tree because it's been healthy, so I haven't had any issues to report on or anything, and you'll see how healthy it looks as we get further on in the spring. So March 22nd is when it started getting a little bit interesting with this tree. The blooms look much better than on the other Yoshino, and they look normal. The only thing that looks weird about it is it's all clustered up closer to the main branches there, but still interesting. So on the night of the 26th, early morning 27th, we got a frost, and those beautiful blooms you just saw are now gone. So the trees eventually recovered from the frost, and I didn't do many pictures or video in April, but here is May 9th, and this tree has changed quite a bit. So it's now June 19th and we got a couple days left in spring, and this will be the final update. The tree looks much better than it did earlier this year, and especially better than it did back in 2020. But Yoshino's not supposed to look like this. It's not the normal growth pattern of the leaves and all that, and that's because it's still buried too deep. But you can see a lot of new growth on there, so I'm hoping the branches, as they spread out, it starts to look more like a Yoshino. I think what I did back in 2020 is save this tree. I'm curious if it ever grows to look like a normal Yoshino or if it continues to give me any problems. So if you're curious to see what this tree looks like in the future, be sure to subscribe and I'll continue to provide updates. And then here's number 2 on June 19th. Like I said, this tree's not been in a lot of videos because it's not giving me any problems, which is surprising because I planted all 3 trees the same way. However, I did plant this one slightly different. I think sometime between number 1 and number 2, somebody had mentioned or I'd read that you need to plant the tree above grade. So I still left the root ball the same height. I didn't try to find the flare, but I did plant it, as you can tell right here, just a little bit above grade. And I think that's what saved this tree and made it look so good. But even though it does look good, it is still buried too deep. And being buried too deep may cause more problems in the future. Like I think this split here is caused by it being buried too deep. But we'll see how it turns out.